like the worst thing you could possibly imagine from a horror show.
The Beagle one. The Beagle puppy one.
Horrific,
yeah,
yeah.
where they covered their head in a basket and put fleas on their heads so they'd eat them alive.
Yeah.
And then they studied these beagles and then killed them. Like, what are you going to learn from that that's good for anybody?
America, after decades of taxpayer-funded animal cruelty, the NIH has finally shut down its notorious Beagle testing lab. This was the same facility where Dr. Anthony Fauci approved experiments that involved pumping deadly bacteria into dogs' lungs and then euthanize them. And while the mainstream media tries to ignore this story, we're going to show you exactly what happened behind closed doors with taxpayer dollars.
Tonight, only on 5, we have discovered 4 companies in the Bay Area are doing tests on dogs. Tests for things like medicine and household chemicals. The breed of choice? Beagles, because they're so friendly.
What is up, guys? Tyson De La Cruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This is a victory for animal rights advocates who've been fighting for years to end these barbaric experiments. It's a perfect example of how the Trump administration is draining the swamp, not just of corrupt bureaucrats, but of cruel and unnecessary government programs that waste taxpayer dollars. Let me break this down for you. For at least 4 decades, the NIH has been conducting horrific experiments on beagles at its clinical center in Maryland. These just weren't routine tests. They were deliberately torturing these animals in ways that would make your stomach turn.
I want to thank you so much for taking a bold step. I want to thank you for the White Coat Waste Project, because this is not only saving precious beagles' lives, but really exposing to the American taxpayer where their money is going. And I think we all want to be good stewards of our tax money. We are responsible for those tax dollars here in Congress, and it's our responsibility to be stewards and overseers of that. So,
me being an animal lover and a beagle owner myself, I love dogs. I think dogs are part of the family, so reading this article really made my stomach turn. According to the White Coat Waste Project, a watchdog group that fights against animal cruelty experiments, NIH scientists would cut into beagles, insert tubing into their lungs, then they would pump deadly pneumonia-causing bacteria in there to conduct experiments related to septic shock and organ failure.
Dogs have spent their lives in a cage. We were told directly by the people in the lab that they have never been outside, that they had never seen sunlight, that they had never had a toy.
Used in research labs, often for chemical and pharmaceutical testing. What goes on in many labs is rarely made public. This video from an undercover PETA investigation shows a worker force-feeding a beagle OxyContin.
After about 4 days of suffering, any dog that survived this torture would then be euthanized and stored in a refrigerator. And how much did these taxpayers pay for each beagle? Between $1,000 and $1,500 per dog from a puppy mill in Virginia.
I'm grateful for Doge to come in alongside of us to help expose some of this and kind of get those wheels turning. But just for the folks back home real quick, before I get into my questions, I want to just highlight 1 million seconds is 11.5 days. 1 billion seconds is 31 years and 7 months. It's like this is a huge difference. So when we're talking about billions of dollars going towards the cruelty of animals, it is much larger than what it sounds because it's been so watered down.
And who was signing off on these cruel experiments? None other than Anthony Fauci, the same man who lectured Americans about following the science during the C-19 pandemic. When confronted about his role in approving these tests, Fauci admitted, "I signed off on these because they were approved by a peer review."
So Dr. Fauci ran NIAID from 1984 to 2022, and when he left at the end of 2022, it had a $6.5 billion budget. Again, we don't know what percentage of that was for animal testing, but probably higher than the average across NIH. And I just want to make a note here that Dr. Fauci, and I don't have any issue with him outside of his abuse of animals, He was not just a paper pusher. He was personally involved in animal experimentation.
But wait, it gets worse. According to testimony before Congress, Fauci wasn't just a bureaucrat signing off on papers. He was personally involved in animal experimentation, testing HIV-like viruses on monkeys until the day he left NIH. He started his career by infecting chimpanzees with HIV and promising that we'd have an AIDS vaccine back in the 1980s. A vaccine we never got.
Experimenting on monkeys, giving them HIV-like viruses until the day he left NIH. He was the lead investigator on grants that were funded by taxpayers to do that. And he started his career by infecting chimpanzees with HIV and promising we were going to have an AIDS vaccine back in the 80s, which we never got because, as you mentioned, they don't get HIV, they don't get AIDS, they don't get sick. So there's been an enormous amount of waste and abuse, and his legacy, unfortunately, he's gone from government, but his legacy at NIH lives on.
The outrage over these experiments was bipartisan. Nearly 24 lawmakers, both Republican and Democrat, signed a letter to Fauci complaining about these experiments, which included debarking dogs, surgically removing their vocal cords before they were drugged and before they were killed.
Have you heard back from Dr. Fauci on this?
Oh, no, not yet. We have not heard back. We did have 24, both Republicans and Democrats, sign on to this letter. And thank God for White Coat Waste Project, who brought this to my attention a couple of weeks ago. And I authored the letter on Friday. There are Republicans and Democrats across the entire country who are really fired up and angry about what we're doing to animals.
And it wasn't just beagles. Our taxpayer dollars were also funding experiments with mice, showing how mice can get addicted to cocaine. We don't need an experiment for that. And there was an experiment to frighten monkeys to death. This is the kind of wasteful, cruel government spending that the Trump administration is committed to eliminating.
Yes, fortunately, he has gone from government, but that doesn't prevent us from holding him accountable for not only the wasteful spending, but the cruel tests that have taken place over the years. So maybe you answered my next question. How many of these treatments have found cures in humans that come from this cruel kind of testing?
Virtually none. You know, we've heard the statistics today, and any that have come, it's out of pure dumb luck, and they're the exception, not the rule, because animal experiments are a dead end.
So what's the good news here? The new NIH director appointed by President Trump has finally shut down this house of horrors, and he's implementing a broader policy to replace animal testing with more advanced, humane alternatives.
I put out a policy to make sure that we have when we use we have animals in research that we look at alternatives. You know, it's very easy, for instance, to cure Alzheimer's in mice. But those things don't translate to humans. So we've put forward a policy to replace animals in research with other technological advances, AI and other tools that actually translate better to human health.
This closure is part of a government-wide effort to phase out animal testing. The FDA recently announced it will work to eliminate such experimentation for antibody therapies. And the EPA is reinstating a phase-out of animal testing that the first Trump administration pursued.
But then I'm getting, and we got rid of all the Beagle experiments on the NIH campus. But you know, it's sort of like people just don't trust the NIH anymore, and I can understand why. The NIH during the pandemic leaned into lockdowns, school closures, all these things, and so I think there's still a level of distrust that the American people have for the NIH that I'm hoping under President Trump we can reverse.
Republican lawmakers are praising the new NIH director for ending these cruel experiments, with New York representatives calling it a victory after years of efforts to end NIH cruel and unnecessary experiments on cats and dogs.
Has PETA reached out to you and told you you're the latest hero? Like, I mean, they must be ecstatic with you right now.
They did. I got flowers from PETA, you know, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. Normally, I think NIH directors tend to get physical threats, but they sent me flowers.
America, this is what real progress looks like. While the previous administration was busy pushing mandates and lockdowns, they were also funding the torture of innocent animals with our taxpayer dollars. The Trump administration is not only putting America first, it's also standing up for the humane treatment of animals and the responsible use of taxpayer money.
We won't do it in this country. The FDA says, hey, this doesn't need to happen. These kinds of drugs don't need to be tested on animals. So we sent our taxpayer dollars overseas to do them in other countries instead. And it's horrific, it's gruesome, it's medieval, and it's tragic that we're sending these puppies to slaughter. And as you just heard in your segment before, $1.7 million to take out the vocal cords of these Beagle puppies, to drug them, kill them, and then dissect them. It's disgusting.
And remember, when it comes to government waste and cruelty, the Trump administration is committed to draining the swamp, even when that swamp includes laboratories torturing innocent animals in the name of science. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe. And as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.